Hi everyone, this is Janine Cloud, and we're going to look at DNA testing success and what that looks like. What is success? Let's look at defining and achieving success when it comes to DNA testing. Now, some discoveries may be life-changing. You've probably heard stories like that. Some may be small victories. They may be small items that you find in your research. Most things are probably somewhere in between those small ones and the life-changing ones. The majority of them, though, are going to require research, and sometimes it's going to be in-depth research. If you've ever done archival research, if you've ever looked through probate records, it could be something along those lines. It may require more than one type of DNA test, just like you require more than one type of documentary record of an ancestor to fill out their profile. Sometimes it may take testing more than one person. You know, that's the thing about genealogy, is it's about connections. And while you certainly wouldn't think of getting records on just one ancestor, a lot of times people test one person and think that's going to be enough. And it's not necessarily the case. In some cases it can be. It depends on what your situation is. But in most cases it's going to take testing more than one person. Sometimes it may even take the resources of a group project to find that level of success that you're looking for. Sometimes it may simply take time. Databases grow, people test all the time, and your results aren't going anywhere. They'll still be there. There are a number of shapes and sizes of DNA tests, just like the testers. We have the national news, dramatic revelations. We have some local news where it's somebody that the community knows. It can be from confirming ancestral origins, whether it's groundbreaking, a historic discovery, or mundane. And by mundane, I mean simply that it is just your family that's involved in it, that discovery. It can be adoptees finding their ancestral origins, siblings, parent, etc. It can be confirming connections to notable family line, and then sharing resources with those matches. We're going to look at cases for each of those. The national news, one of the splashiest stories, was the Paul Franczak story. Back in 1964, there was a baby stolen from a hospital in Chicago, and there was a toddler found in Newark, New Jersey a couple of years later, and by some alchemy they thought that this was the child. And in 2012, that child had grown up quite a bit, and he did a DNA test and determined that he was not actually biologically related to the family that he had lived with, that he was returned to. And there was national publicity, 2020, etc. And there were a number of detectives, DNA detectives working on it, but the DNA detective group headed by C.C. Moore worked his case, and they did lots of DNA testing, lots of trees, lots of DNA testing. And I remember when the final test came through confirming his identity at mtDNA, we all did happy dances. So that was a huge discovery. And then with more testing and more research, they found the real Paul Franczak. And there's been a book and a documentary and stories like that. So if you were to Google Paul Franczak, you would see that it was a huge story. And so that's definitely a success. It took a long time. It took several years to get through the whole story, but it is a huge success. Then on a local level, this is Houston area meteorologist who's an adoptee, Frank Billingsley. He took a Y37 test and a family finder test in an effort to find his biological family at the advice of a coworker. And he tested with us, of course, and got some really good surname hits, so he was able to follow that lead. And it turns out he's my fourth cousin, that along that line, the Hensley line. And lots of research later, several researchers contributing, they found his birth parents, including his father, who didn't realize that he had misattributed parentage, misattributed paternity, that his father actually didn't know that he was a Hensley after all. And Cousin Frank wrote a book, Swabbed and Found, and he's done quite a bit of local talk on it. So for him, that was a huge success, and for the community to see that was possible. Then there's something like connecting to ancient remains. Kevin Segura tested to find out more of his ancestry. He had his biological father that he never met was Native American, and he took Family Finder as My Origins showed Amerindian ancestry. So he took Big Y, since that is the top of the line Y DNA test that follows that direct paternal line, and that was the best thing to give him more information about his father. Now, his results connected him with ancient remains in the Lovelock Cave in Nevada, which is in Paiute territory. And his signature, that was a unique haplogroup Q signature. Now, keep in mind there are only 2 haplogroups proven to be native to the Americas on Y-DNA, and those are under Q and under C. And his was under Q, but it doesn't match any other known native lineages, and it doesn't match any other Q for more than 15,000 years. So that was pretty spectacular, groundbreaking results for him, and certainly very interesting for the community. And one of the more interesting parts of it is that because of where that cave is, it suggests a different pathway, a different migration path across the Bering Strait into the Americas. While we're talking about Native American, this one's pretty personal to me. So it's kind of small, but it's also indicative of the kind of thing that you can do to help hedge your bets and get more success. My paternal grandfather was Cherokee, and through his maternal line especially, and my third great grandmother was Tawny, a full-blood Cherokee. She's documented on a number of rolls, and her daughter's name was Jane, and she was also full-blood Cherokee. And then my great grandmother was 3/4 Cherokee, and she had a daughter from her first marriage, and then that's Sarah Jane. That's a photo of Sarah Jane right there. And then she had a daughter, and she had a daughter. Well, mitochondrial DNA follows that direct maternal line, and so when I found cousin Janice, who was in an autosomal match, and she had a tree that showed that she was that direct maternal line descendant, where I'm a descendant of Sarah's brother Joel through his son Jack, so there's no mitochondrial possibilities there. So Janice agreed to test our mitochondrial DNA with family tree DNA. She's a second cousin once removed, and when her results came back, they were B2. Now, with mtDNA, the Native American haplogroups are A, B, C, D, and X. Certain subclades of those haplogroups, and B2 is a native subclade. So it did confirm that that particular line was Native American, that there was not a non-native ancestor, a maternal ancestor back beyond Tawny. Now, Aunt Carolyn, on the other hand, was an adoptee. Lots of adoptee stories. My aunt by marriage, and she found her birth mother through her adoption documents, and her mother's family were Italian immigrants, so she thought that her mother's family was 100% Italian. Her grandfather listed that he was born in Castelvecchio, Italy. There was more than one Castelvecchio, though, so it took a time to track him down. She took Family Finder to find out about the birth father that she couldn't find anything out about. And she didn't have a whole lot of matches, and many of the matches that she had lots of Polish and Eastern European names. Not so many Italians, but more Polish and Eastern European. Now, her My Origins result weren't particularly surprising considering that her grandparents came from Italy, and you see there was as 49% Southern European, and then there's that Eastern European as well, and some Middle Eastern thrown in there. So that made for some confusion on the father's side, but that half Southern European wasn't surprising. Now, when we updated to My Origins 3 and got more refined populations, it was a bit surprising because that Italian peninsula went down to 31% with 29% Greece and Balkans. Now, I couldn't get back to anything Greek or Balkan there, but it turned out that in the meanwhile, I was able to dig up documentation that her grandfather's birthplace was actually Castelvecchia de Puglia. Now that's significant because, in 1461, the King of Naples granted land to some Albanian refugees who had crossed the Adriatic to escape Turkish occupation. So if you see the green area there, that's Albania, and right across that Stiletto area, just a little bit inland there, is Castelvecchia de Puglia, and so many of the descendants there are from those Albanian refugees. So that made her results make a lot more sense. Now we know where that Greek and Balkan came from on her maternal side, and it was an interesting story for her because she had no idea, and I had no idea that that was a situation that happened. Now, another unexpected situation happened. We uploaded her results to MyHeritage, and she'd tested at Ancestry. She had a few close matches on Ancestry, but none of the people had any trees or enough identifying information for me to be able to do trees for them. She had this one match that was fairly close, looks like a cousin match, and you would think that that would have been enough to figure it out. Well, I was contacted by a researcher through MyHeritage who was asking about her birth mother, and that my name was associated with her birth mother, and that she was researching for a friend who was a daughter of that birth mother. Well, now my aunt was told that her birth mother didn't have any other children. But I did the research, looked it all up, figured it out, and it turned out that she had another daughter, and that this cousin match was actually her half-sister's son, so a half-nephew. So at 77 years old, she gained a half-sibling and a half-nephew that she had known nothing about previously. So that was even though she still doesn't have the connections to her father's side yet, she does have more connections on her mother's side. When it comes to group projects, one of our most successful examples of connections, thanks to John Sloan, administrator of the Boyd Project, he shared that they were able to connect to some distant ancestors as a result of a cooperation between the RU-198 and the Boyd Y-DNA Project and the Declaration of Arbroath Family History Project at the University of Strathclyde. They were recruited a tester who's in the peerage as a distant documented descendant of the 4th Earl of Kilmarnock, and that he was also descended from Sir Robert Boyd, a notable supporter of King Robert the Bruce, and one of the people named in the Declaration of Arbroath. Well, his results confirmed that noble line of Boyd was indeed part of the RU-198 family, and his pedigree is in the peerage going back to the 12th century. So by defining that line, which comes under FT 69836, they were able to determine that whole line was related to the noble Boyd family. All of these testers that are shown here, and some who aren't because they didn't have it done Big Y, now know and had confirmed connection to the noble house of Boyd because of that confirmed connection. Another type of connection is sharing. So I received an email from the kit manager who was researching her husband's genealogy, and she was asking about a specific family binder match. Now, this email included a descendancy chart. It was the perfect email that you would ever want to receive when trying to determine how you're related. It included, all the common names, etc., and I said the descendancy chart, the pedigree, and it turned out that the chart in itself was enough. It was the tester was the grandson of my maternal grandfather's sister. So we're talking my mother's father's sister's daughter's son. And his mother had died in childbirth. His grandmother died the next year, so they didn't know anything much about that branch of the family. Well, I have photos and a letter written by his grandmother, my great aunt, that I was able to send. And here's Vera in 1923, looking like she did before she died. That's the caption that her mother had put on there. And so it was really gratifying to be able to fill in a whole section of that chart because they didn't really have any other connections, and I had plenty of them. Sometimes the waiting is the hardest part. I've had people tell me that they need to get a new hobby because waiting is really, really hard. Well, one example of that, Operation DNA Vietnam, was a project that was founded in 2010 by an adoptee, a Vietnamese adoptee, who wanted to create a database of adoptees to be able to aid in research and discovery of the siblings and biological relatives. Well, there was a tester in late 2022 who got results and opened them immediately to see a parent-child relationship, a parent-child match. So of course she had to check it out and everything. We checked it out, and it turned out that it was in fact the tester's father, who tested in 2015, 7 years prior. So sometimes it just takes time to get that success. So in conclusion, success is in the eye of the beholder. It may not always be a dramatic reveal. It may be. It does usually take a lot of additional research and testing. Paul Fronczak's national splash results, were not arrived at by simply ordering a family finder or getting a Y-DNA test. It took a lot of research. And remember, you could be someone else's success story. Connecting with you could make their day. Having your information from your ancestors to fill in their chart could be that success. So try to keep an open mind about what it is that you consider success. Make sure you keep track of those little facts, those little things that you find along the way, and consider those as successes as well. And be patient, because your brick wall buster may not have tested yet. So test everyone you can. But thank you for your attention. If you have questions, general DNA questions can be sent to groups@ftdna.com, and presentation-specific ones could be sent to me at janine.c@ftdna.com.